Welcome back, everybody, to the plenary. I hope that you enjoyed meeting new people or saying hi to old friends in our little networking session. I met some really great people. I'm so excited about how many different folks we have joining us today. If I can ask everybody to please turn their microphones off so that we're not disturbing our upcoming speakers. And we'll go ahead and get started with our webinar for today. A reminder that we are recording the first two presentations today. Again, a reminder that closed captioning is enabled. So if you would like to turn that on or off to help follow along, you have that opportunity in the buttons at the bottom of Zoom. It's really my great pleasure to have these three speakers from the University of Bergen joining us today to talk to us about the status of deep sea mining in Norway. We're going to be starting off hearing from Steffen Leth Jørgensen about kind of the role of the Center for Deep Sea Research in understanding the context for deep sea mining. A presentation from Pedro Ribeiro about some of the big knowledge gaps and need for science and understanding deep sea minerals and potential mining impacts. And then a presentation by Eoghan Reeves, which will not be recorded as it has some unpublished information in it, about trying to understand the economic metal inventory in the systems that are potentially proposed for mining in Norway. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Steffen. To our audience, you're welcome to keep your cameras on if you like. If you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the chat function to type those in, and we'll come to them at the end of all the presentations. So if you want to just remember the question and put it in there, that's fine. And we'll come to the question and answer session at the end. So each of our speakers will give about a 10-minute presentation. Okay, Steffen, are you ready?
I think. Am I muted?
No, you're there. I hear you.
I'm here. Do I share?
I am
Question is, do
seeing
I
your
share
screen.
the
It's
wrong?
on the deep sea infrastructure slide.
Yes, but I can't see it myself, you see.
Oh,
I just stopped sharing that. Just give me a sec.
yeah,
As
no worries.
usual. Let's try it again. Share screen. Oh, now I see it. Let's start with the right one. And does it work?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, I'm just going to put this one down then. Okay, thanks a lot, and apologize for the small delay here. Thanks a lot for allowing me to present today. I think this is a great opportunity to present the center and also present our role in seafloor mineral mining and the status in Norway. So I think I'll start by shortly introducing the center in the context of mineral mining, because the current Center for Deep Sea Research actually started back in 2007, maybe a little bit earlier than that, where the first deep sea research was initiated in Bergen. And in 2007, we got a Center of Excellence in Geobiology. I was just started as a PhD student actually back then, and that was a 5 + 5 years funding from the Norwegian Research Council. And when that ended, we transitioned into COBRA Center for Integrated Deep Sea Research, and that was a private funding from a family in Bergen, a shipping family in Bergen. And more recently, we are now just called Center for Deep Sea Research, and we are funded by another family, the Trond family, through their foundation. But throughout all these years, we have been more or less doing the same thing, and that is to go out in Norwegian waters, specifically along the mid-ocean ridges, and investigated seafloor processes there. And through this work, we have basically mapped more or less all the mineral resources that are in Norwegian territory. And mind you, that the Norwegian territory, you can see that on the side of the screen is marked within this red line, is quite big. And all this is under Norwegian jurisdiction. And what you can see, the dots, I'd like to make you or try to get your attention towards the I don't know what color is that anyway, like a orange kind of squares, and that's manganese crust. And it's important to note that the manganese resources as they are different from what you probably know from the Clarion-Clipperton zone, which are these manganese nodules. In Norwegian territory, the manganese is formed on the slopes of seamounts, and it forms these, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 centimeter thick crustal layers on the side of the mountains. And then the other thing I want to point out is then the yellow and the white circles along the rift system, and that's hydrothermal deposits. And I guess we have found all of them and described all of them, but one or two of them over these 15 or so years. In the beginning, this was just, you know, basic research, and nobody really cared beside ourselves and our fellow research community. But in recent years, as you of course know, it's caught a lot of attention from private industry and also from the Norwegian government, of course, in terms of the mineral resources that's there. We are an integrated center in the sense that we have researchers that are geochemists, biologists, microbiologists, geophysics, petrology. We basically span the whole thing, meaning that we have a very good holistic view of seafloor processes, which comes very handy when we discuss mineral resources, also from not only from an economical perspective, but also from an ecosystem preservation perspective. Just very briefly, of course, all our research is very highly dependent on the infrastructure, and I'm not going into detail with this, but we clearly have access to quite nice facilities through the Norwegian Marine Research Facilities, and that includes observatories and icebreakers and remotely operated vehicles and automatic vehicles. We are doing our research within 5 different themes, and 2 of them are basic research. And the first one is a theme called Mantle to Fluid, which looks at how large-scale processes influences fluid rock interactions. And we have another basic research theme that goes on from the fluid. So how does the chemistry and the nature of the fluids influence life? And then we have a third theme, which is more applied and of course very relevant for what we're going to discuss today, and that is a theme on geological resources and environmental impact assessment. And I have Pedro here today, who is leading the part of this theme on the environmental impacts. And it's basically looking at 2 things. What are the resources that's in Norwegian territory? How is it formed? And then, of course, what are the potential impact on the environment that mining might have? We'll hear more about that when Pedro is going to talk. Then we have another theme that's on biological resources, so enzymes, proteins, and whatnot that we can find in the deep sea. And finally, we also are involved in developing new technology for deep sea exploration and observation. Okay, enough about the background of the center, but it just to show that we've been involved in mineral resources for many years, but from a basic research perspective. If you want to know more about the center, you can check out our webpage. That's written down here. So a bit more detailed about Norway and the whole opening process, because this is a bit special since it's Norwegian territory, right? So we don't have to, or Norway don't have to oblige to the same rules and regulations. So they've started their own process. And the opening process started back in 2019 with a Norwegian government putting out the Mineral Act that was passed in the parliament in March 2019. And then following that, the year after was that the opening process itself was initiated by the former government. And then following on that one, or in that, maybe I should say that in this initiation and the start of the opening process, it was decided that it was governed under the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy, and they then outsourced the responsibility for the management of this to the NPD, the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate. So just so when I talk about the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate, you know that they are the one that's holding all the strings in this. It was also decided in this opening process that there should be a risk assessment and a resource assessment. And in January, there was a public hearing about the proposed program. There was the NPD who proposed a program for the risk assessment. And here this the center gave feedback on this. And then after the feedback and the open hearing, there was the program for risk assessment was passed through the parliament. And our contribution to all this risk assessment was that we provided a lot of the basic information about the ecosystem types and the seafloor processes, and basically the current knowledge about the deep sea and seafloor processes. Then in 2022, in October, there was a public hearing after the risk assessment was put forward. And there again, we gave feedback to that risk assessment. And then following that, that was taken into account. Then in June this year was a big day because the government then proposed that there should be a continuation of the opening process. And what that basically means is that they proposed that the Norwegian seafloor, or large parts of it, can open for private exploration. So they can give out licenses to private companies to do exploration. And it's a two-step process, the way that they describe it. That first, it's exploration, and if the private industry can prove that they can actually do exploitation in a profitable and sustainable way, they can get exploitation licenses. And that was then proposed by the government. It's been out for public hearing. We gave our feedback, and a lot of other institutions gave their feedback. And now we are waiting, and we expect a final decision in early January. And either the parliament say yes, we continue with the opening process, or they say no, we stop it here. So that's just to, I mean, I know Pedro will talk a bit more about this here, and you can ask questions afterwards about how the whole process has been. But again, just to show you that basically the center has been involved with providing knowledge from basically the beginning of the opening process. And my final slide here is about our role in the opening process, to just wrap up on that, and a little bit about how our position is in the current situation. So what we have done is that we provided basic research knowledge to decision makers and stakeholders, and that include the public, but also private industry, but based on sound scientific data. And I think that's really important to stress, that we try not to have too many opinions that are not founded in research data. And that can be a bit tricky these days, because there's a lot of media pressure and pressure from GOs and NGOs and everywhere. But I think we need to keep calm and just base everything on what are actually the scientific data showing us. And then, of course, we have another important role, and that is to educate a new generation of people in relevant topics within seafloor ecosystem management and mineral resources and the formation and basic principles. And the way that we do that is to give them a broad interdisciplinary background in deep sea exploration. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, we have also helped governments with know-how and expertise within deep sea exploration. And by that, I mean we have, for instance, we have helped the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate in the sense that we have helped them or showed them how they should do their part of their mapping, or we help them with the mapping. We have helped them collect sample material from relevant areas. When we are conducting our research, it would be foolish not to collect samples for them as well. So that's sort of our role in the opening process. And then in our position in the current opening process, so with that, I mean now that we are at a stage in the process where the government has to say, okay, do we open for private exploration and give out licenses for that, and potentially for exploitation licenses as well? Our point of view on that is that there's nothing in the knowledge that we have now that makes us say that that private companies cannot do exploration, given that there are sufficient regulation in place. And I think I should probably elaborate a bit on that. But by this we mean that there should be a legal framework that regulates the activity, right? So how big volumes can one explore, and where should there be areas, or there should clearly be areas that should not be explored, like active vent systems, for instance. And then it's also a prerequisite that the tools that are used are similar to what we're already using for research exploration. But if the government puts up such a legal framework and under certain conditions, then it's hard for us to say that we have any knowledge that can justify that there shouldn't be any private exploration. However, when it comes to exploitation, I think we and basically everyone else agrees that the knowledge base that we have is simply not big enough to make any informed decision about how sound it would be to do exploitation. What is the risk involved in doing exploitation? We simply don't know. And not only from an ecosystem perspective, but also from an economical perspective, we don't know how economically viable it is. So it's just premature. Making a decision about this now would be meaningless, basically. Yeah. So that's our stand on that, and I think this is a general point of view, not only from our center, but also from the government. And yeah, so but I think I'll leave it with this, and then we can take question at the end, and I'll then give the words to Pedro. So I'll stop share here.
Thank you so much, Steffen, for that opening background into the role of the center and helping understand this topic. Pedro, are you ready?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Let me just share. I'll just share the screen, hoping that everything will go well.
And a reminder to our audience, if you want to remember the question you wanted to ask Steffen, please feel free to put it in the chat and we'll come to it at the Q&A session at the end. All right, looks great, Pedro.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Beth. Hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I'll try to give an overview of critical science gaps in the opening process for deep sea mining in Norway. As Steffen mentioned, it's more or less common knowledge now from all parties that there are science gaps, that these science gaps compromise management of deep sea mining. However, the opening process is continuing, and there is a government proposal. And I will talk a little bit about not only these critical science gaps, but also how the government proposes to tackle these science gaps. So as Steffen mentioned, there has been an opening process since 2019, where there have been knowledge-based reports. There has been an impact assessment based on the knowledge base. There's also been a resource assessment. in the area that you see on the right side. So the polygon that you see in green is the study area. So it's area that has been investigated in these preliminary studies for resource assessment. And we have the red dots are the occurrences for polymetallic sulfides, and the yellow dots confirmed occurrences for manganese crusts. This area is more or less 600,000 square kilometers, and it ranges from depths around probably 500 meters on the shallowest seamounts to nearly 4,000 meters depth on the deeper part of the axial valley. The recent government proposal to open now reduces or proposes to reduce the opening area to the smaller polygon that you see in purple. So reducing by half the proposed opening area. But the proposal also mentions that this doesn't mean that the remaining area in a future stage cannot be open. So this is not excluding, let's say, permanently the outer area of this proposed deep sea mining area, but for now, for the first stage that is being considered now and will be voted soon, we are considering only the purple area, and this is still around 280,000 square kilometers. And it includes polymetallic sulfide areas and also manganese crust areas. The main take-home messages, let's say, from the assessment and recommendations from this report to the Parliament that was issued in June 2023 includes a proposal from the government for a stepwise approach for opening, as the basis for granting an exploitation area. And this also includes adaptive management, meaning that with new information, with new knowledge about the environment and about the resources, there will be an adaptation of how the process continues in terms of regulations. And as Steffen mentioned, the government also intends that the exploitation plans will only be approved if the proposed activity can be carried out in a sustainable and responsible manner. So if the operator or if the company applying to a license, exploitation license, can prove that this operation is profitable and it will be carried out sustainably or responsibly. And the government also proposes that in order to acquire more knowledge and to accelerate acquiring more knowledge, there should be government-funded programs with research institutions, the main research institutions that hold the expertise, combined with the commercial exploration by private actors, as a measure to accelerate gathering of knowledge in the deep sea. I will only focus here when I talk about the knowledge status regarding the ecosystems. I will only talk about benthic ecosystems. This is the main, or this is actually the area of research where the Center for Deep Sea Research is focusing on. I'm talking here about benthic ecosystems. And the image that you see on your screens was published in the knowledge-based report that for which the Center for Deep Sea Research was responsible, also with other partners. And at that time, we generated this figure illustrating how little or how much or how little we know about deep sea benthic ecosystems in the area that is being considered for opening. And we divided in basic knowledge, understanding patterns, and understanding processes. And we are right now, even 2 years after this report was published, at a stage where we are discovering biodiversity, characterizing biodiversity in most of these areas. Some areas such as seamounts or active vents, they have different degrees. We have different degrees of understanding regarding the biodiversity of these areas. So it's not homogeneous throughout the different habitats. But we are also just uncovering biogeographical patterns, understanding how unique the Norwegian Greenland Sea is compared to other regions of the Atlantic. When it comes to understanding the ecology and the ecosystem functioning, we are really grazing the surface. For that, we will need more experiments. We will need sufficient time to establish experiments and time series studies to be able to understand how the different organisms interact with each other and with the environment. So we are quite far away from that. So the Center for Deep Sea Research, as was mentioned earlier, has been the main research institution investigating deep sea ecosystems in the Arctic mid-ocean ridge, in that area that is being considered for mining. And one of the goals of this last mandate of the Center for Deep Sea Research is to understand environmental impacts. We have a number of projects, fundamental research going on the various research fields, from microbiology to benthic biodiversity, habitat mapping. We have a number of projects, but we do have one dedicated project to investigating environmental knowledge gaps in relation to seabed mining in Norway. And this project is called EcoSafe Ridge Mining. It is a 3.5-year project, started at the end of 2021. It will go until mid-2025, and it has 6 work packages. It has a big team, a large team from 4 research institutions: University of Bergen, the NIOS in the Netherlands, NORS, and also the University of Stavanger. And it's a collaborative project between academia and industry partners, meaning that this project is funded by the Research Council of Norway, so that academia and the industry can build knowledge together. In the scope of the EcoSafe Ridge Mining project, we have the academic institutions that have designed the research program and are conducting the research program, but we interact with industry in order to also gain more knowledge about how mining may take place, so that we can take in that knowledge into some of our modeling of mining impacts. And on the other hand, industry partners can also have a first-hand interaction with us in order to understand what is really important for us to know from them, but also vice versa, what is important from them to know from us, such as standards and which variables to measure in the environment, and actually what does it take to do that, and how long will it take. So this project has 6 work packages, 3 work packages dedicated to gathering baseline, and 3 work packages dedicated to specific impacts associated with deep sea mining, more specifically modeling of sediment plumes and understanding ecotoxicology effects from mining plumes. And then work package 6 brings together all this knowledge in trying to develop a risk framework for deep sea mining in Norway. And in this case, we are particularly focused on seafloor massive sulfides, even though part of the project is also dedicated to investigating ecosystems on manganese crusts, which we are doing right now, especially with visual surveys from ROV. So just to finish my presentation, some of the activity is focused on and I hope the video works, conducting video surveys from inactive sulfide areas, trying to characterize what kind of communities live there, and comparing with other areas on the seafloor. But we are also focusing on seamounts, especially trying to characterize habitats, communities that live close or on manganese crusts, and comparing these with other seamount areas where you don't have manganese crusts. But we are also conducting, as I said, environmental baseline. We are deploying sensors to characterize several abiotic parameters through these 3 years of project, but also collecting fauna and conducting studies with fauna from inactive sulfide areas and the periphery of active vents to understand the trophic interactions going on down there. Of course, for connectivity, this is essential in terms of recovery potential from deep sea mining. We are conducting studies with using population genomics and larval dispersal modeling, not only with vent species, but also with sponges. So these are 2 of the main groups of taxa that live on vents or off the vents, more specifically on seamounts, but also on inactive sulfides. And one of our goals is also to, sorry, I skipped, characterize the deep sea currents down there. So we have deployed and recovered current meters through all this time, and we are working on to developing circulation model, which we can use to simulate larval dispersal, but also to simulate the spread of sediment plumes along the study area. And finally, this is my last slide. We started conducting experiments, in situ experiments for ecotoxicology, where we expose a small area of the seafloor using incubation chambers. We expose it to, in this case, to crushed seafloor massive sulfides material. And there we measure the effect on carbon fluxes. So we have short-term, so a few days incubation experiments, and then we are collecting the fauna, the epifauna, and also we are collecting cores from this experimental and also from control areas. And next year cruise, we are planning to conduct similar experiments on seamounts, on sponge communities, also to understand the degree of toxicity that, or the potential degree of toxicity that sediment plume containing metals may have on the organisms. But this is what I have to present right now, but I'm looking forward to your questions. And I will pass the word now to Eoghan for the last part of the presentation. Thank you very much.